Hello and welcome to World News on the Hour here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. We begin with news of yet another deadly attack by the Russian Federation on Ukraine. Overnight, Russia launched one of its largest missile and drone assaults on the capital, Kyiv. At least 7 people have been killed and 28 wounded, including children, after a barrage that lasted more than 3 hours and struck residential areas. We're joined live by Oz Chatterjee in Kyiv. Oz, what can you tell us about the scale of this attack and what are you seeing on the streets in Kyiv at the moment?
Well, I'd say it was probably a bit longer than 3 hours. I'd probably put it around 3.5 hours. The air defense was working throughout the night above my apartment here in the center of Kyiv. Yes, 7 people have been killed in the Kyiv region, 6 not too far away from where I'm standing right now. An apartment building mostly collapsed under the weight of this attack, leaving many civilians dead, 7 civilians dead. 6 in that one location, as you can see on your screen, where the search and rescue operations are still underway. 28 injured in these attacks. The Ukrainian government saying Russia launched 352 attack drones and 16 missiles, including a North Korean missile. Now, the mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko, was on the scene. He gave his assessment in a statement. Let's listen to that.
We are seeing the latest consequences of the Russian attack, a destroyed residential building. 5 are already reported dead. We hope that the number of fatalities will not increase. The areas affected by the attack today are Holosivsky, Darnitsky, Sviatoshinsky, Solomansky and Shevchenkivsky districts. Rescue operations are currently underway. We hope the number of fatalities will not increase. To all those affected, please contact the headquarters set up in each of the affected locations. You will receive full information regarding assistance, temporary housing, and the mobility fund. We continue working. We hope the number of fatalities will not increase.
Unfortunately, the number of fatalities has increased, and it may continue to increase throughout the day. Now, the inclusion of a North Korean missile in these attacks has also drawn a fierce response from the Ukrainian government. President Zelensky visiting London for a state visit today. President Zelensky saying everyone in countries next to Russia and Iran and North Korea should think about whether they will be able to protect life there if this coalition of killers persists and continues to spread terror. So it's very clear where the Ukrainians stand on things and the connection with what's happening in the Middle East. But while many eyes are distracted on the situation in Iran, Russia's using that opportunity, exploiting that opportunity and using it to target more Ukrainian cities. More Ukrainian civilians are being killed in what is a widespread attack, as you heard from the mayor, Klitschko there, targeted multiple areas of Kyiv at the same time. So another dark day for the Ukrainians. They will be hoping for some further support from their Western partners in the field of air defense. And that's certainly going to be high up on the agenda in Zelensky's visit to London today. Back to you, Ashim.
Thanks, Oz. Indeed, a tragic day for civilians in Ukraine being targeted in that way. Stay safe, Oz. Ukraine's top diplomat, Andrii Sybiha, has called on his country's allies to expedite their diplomatic efforts to force Russia to peace talks. The appeal comes after another deadly Russian strike on Ukraine and ahead of a meeting with EU foreign ministers in Brussels.
Another sleepless night in Kyiv, another heavy missile attack on Ukrainian civilian targets, many casualties, 7 people killed. So that's the real response of Russian side on all peace efforts, on all peace proposals. Putin, he is a war maker. So it's a proper time to engage all diplomatic instruments to raise the price for further Russian aggression. Again, it's a proper time to use all diplomatic instruments to force Russia to peace, to force Russia to negotiate. they have no reasons to sit around negotiation table. So, once again, sanctions, isolation, frozen assets.
Lukashenko himself decides who should be released, said Alina Kushik, head of Belsat TV, discussing the release of Belarusian opposition figure Sergei Sikhanutsky. Earlier, we asked her about how the release process works and whether Poles can expect the release of Andrzej Poczobut anytime soon.
Lukashenko is a trader. He's trading people. For Lukashenko, political prisoners are a kind of currency.
Right, like a bargaining chip.
Bargaining chip, exactly. That's why he decided, I know that the list Belarusian Democratic Forces asked to release was much longer. Yeah. And I know that there were completely different names in this list, because we also have a so-called humanitarian list, people who should be released.
Iran's Foreign Minister Araghchi is meeting with Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Monday. The two are to discuss recent Israeli and American attacks, as well as a range of other issues. Vladimir Putin told the Iranian Foreign Minister that the strikes targeting Iranian nuclear facilities were groundless and unjustified. In response, Araghchi thanked Putin for condemning U.S. and Israeli actions, telling him that Russia stood on, quote, the right side of history. Iran, Russia's key Middle East ally, signed a strategic partnership with Moscow earlier this year and provided crucial military assistance to Russia at the start of Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. President Putin also said on Monday that he recently spoke by phone with Donald Trump, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, Iranian President Pezeshkian, and the leader of the UAE. Europe remains divided on exactly how to react to the escalating tensions in the Middle East. The EU's top diplomats are meeting in Brussels to hash out a common position on Iran and to discuss Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine. Our Europe correspondent, Alex Kadia, is in Brussels for us. Alex, what role can Europe play when it comes to the war in Iran?
Well, at the moment, exactly what that role would look like remains relatively unclear. If we rewind a few days, you had the foreign ministers of the UK, France, Germany meeting with their Iranian counterparts. That, at the time, just a few days ago, was seen as an opportunity to provide a diplomatic alternative to escalation in Iran. Just hours later, a day later, the United States joining in striking those targets deep in Iranian territory, making diplomacy, at least, seem less likely. But that is the message from the European Union. We've seen a joint statement from Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, Emmanuel Macron in France, and Keir Starmer in the UK, all calling for Iran to continue with diplomatic efforts, to keep engaging in conversations, in negotiations. And that remains the European position. Today, we've seen Kaja Kallas repeating that, urging Iran to engage diplomatically to try and de-escalate this situation. The other clear position from the European Union is that they do not want to see Iran have a nuclear weapon. But nevertheless, this was not supposed to be the main topic of conversation at this meeting of foreign ministers. There was supposed to be a broad discussion about Europe reconsidering its relationship with Israel as a result of the review of the association agreement that the EU has with Israel, found in breach of breaching humanitarian laws and therefore breaching its association agreement with the EU. That, for now, will be discussed, but we understand the situation in Iran overshadowing that, and perhaps no big decisions being made as a result of Israel's actions in Gaza. So certainly you get the feeling those European diplomats are scrambling to keep up. They are trying to come up with a common position. But Europe is divided on this, is divided on Israel, is relatively powerless, it seems at least, to intervene on Iran. Of course, the situation in Ukraine, we just heard from Oz Chatterjee, with people being killed in Kyiv, in residential buildings, also on the agenda, but very much sidelined by those conversations on Iran. For now, Brussels remains divided on this particular conflict, and I'll send it back to you in Warsaw.
Thank you for that, Alex. I'm sure you'll be keeping us informed as things develop. Iran's parliament has approved the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, although the final decision will be made by the Supreme National Security Council. The move comes despite Marco Rubio's calls on Chinese leaders to urge their Iranian counterparts to keep the trade route open.
As a result of the decision, oil futures price rose by 10% to $78.89 a barrel, which marks the highest rise since January. The waterway located between Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman is just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, but is responsible for 20% of world's oil trade. According to U.S. Energy Information Administration, about 20 million barrels of oil travels through the strait each day. If Iran blocks it, global oil prices would spike and Europe could face energy shortages, especially in countries highly dependent on Middle Eastern fuel. Europe is not the only region threatened by the closure, as China is Iran's biggest oil customer, importing over 1.8 million barrels per day over the past month.
Following the completion of the evacuation of Polish and European citizens from Israel and Iran, Polish Deputy Foreign Minister Henryka Mościcka-Dendis provided an update on the situation. She emphasized that the Foreign Ministry had issued travel alerts for the entire Middle East region.
I would like to remind you that in recent days, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has raised travel alerts for the entire Middle East region. These alerts cover not only Israel, but also Iran, Iraq, Yemen and Jordan. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, we advise against traveling to this region. We are saying, do not go. We also ask that you regularly follow the travel warnings we publish on our website. We would like to assure you that at this stage of the conflict, we are not planning a full evacuation of our diplomatic missions, neither from Tel Aviv nor from Tehran. Both missions remain operational, and we will try to stay on the ground for as long as possible, while of course ensuring the safety of our diplomats.
A suspected spy who was carrying a Polish passport has been arrested on the Greek island of Crete, raising fresh concerns over NATO security in the region. Greek authorities have detained a 26-year-old Azerbaijani national on espionage charges after he was caught photographing the U.S. Bay naval base in Crete. The man, who holds a Polish passport, had rented a hotel room overlooking the base and was found with around 5,000 files, including images of military ships. Investigators are now probing links to another Azerbaijani citizen recently arrested in Cyprus, suspected of spying on British military facilities. This comes shortly after a recently foiled Iranian plot targeting Israeli citizens stranded in Cyprus. Poland has crowned its new national beauty queen, 20-year-old Maya Todd, who claimed the Miss Polonia 2025 title at a gala in Warsaw after beating 23 other finalists in one of Europe's longest-running pageants. At the ceremony, she was gifted the prestigious amber crown by the outgoing Miss Polonia, Maya Kleider. This year's winner will next represent Poland at the Miss World competition scheduled for next year. Todd, who grew up between the UK and Katowice, is a lifeguard and a first-year economics student in Warsaw. She's also an avid singer and a music aficionado, which she showcased by performing the Eurythmics' Sweet Dreams during the talent round of the contest. And yes, she is the daughter of our very own TVP World reporter, John Todd.
numer 18. Maja Todd.
Jestem studentką pierwszego roku SGH w Warszawie. Dorastałam w Wielkiej Brytanii i moją największą pasją jest śpiew, szczególnie muzyka soul i R&B.
So that brings us to the end of this bulletin. Congratulations to Maya Todd. See you on the hour. Goodbye.